The military recruitment office buzzed with the usual morning chaos. Young men filled out forms, their mothers hovering nearby with worried expressions. Behind the metal desk, Sergeant Mills shuffled through paperwork, his coffee growing cold as he processed another batch of eager recruits. Then, she walked in. Sarah Chen moved through the room like she owned it. Not arrogant, but confident. The kind of confidence that comes from knowing exactly what you want and having the skills to back it up. At 25, she had already served 2 tours overseas as a civilian contractor, but now she wanted something different. Something more. The conversations around her died down. Not because she was particularly striking, though her black hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail and her dark eyes seemed to take in every detail of the room. It was something else. The way she carried herself. The small scar above her left eyebrow. The calluses on her hands that spoke of hard work and discipline. Sarah approached the desk where Sergeant Mills sat. He looked up from his paperwork, his expression already forming into the practiced smile he gave to concerned parents and nervous teenagers. "Can I help you, miss? Are you here for your boyfriend? Brother, maybe?" Sarah's jaw tightened slightly, but her voice remained steady. "I'm here to enlist. Infantry Division. And I want to request specialized sniper training." The silence that followed was deafening. Then came the laughter. It started as a chuckle from Mills, then spread through the room like wildfire. The young men waiting their turn exchanged glances and grins. Even some of the mothers looked amused, as if Sarah had told a particularly good joke. "Sweetheart," Mills said, wiping his eyes, "I think you might be in the wrong place. The administrative positions are handled through a different," I said, "infantry." Sarah's voice cut through his condescension like a blade. "Sniper Division. I have experience with long-range precision shooting. I want to put that experience to use for my country." Mills leaned back in his chair, his amusement growing. "Listen, honey, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but this isn't a game. Infantry is serious business. Men's business. Why don't you consider something more suitable? Medical corps maybe? Communications?" Around the room, heads nodded in agreement. A few of the younger recruits whispered to each other, their words carrying just enough venom to sting. "She watches too many movies. Probably thinks it's like playing video games. Someone should tell her this isn't Call of Duty." Sarah stood perfectly still, absorbing their mockery like armor absorbing bullets. She had heard it all before, in different words, from different people. The doubt. The dismissal. The assumption that because she was a woman, she couldn't handle the real work of warfare. But she had handled it. For 2 years in Afghanistan, working as a security contractor for a private military company. She had protected convoy routes, secured compounds, and, yes, she had taken shots that saved lives. The men she worked alongside learned quickly not to underestimate her. Some learned the easy way, through demonstration. Others learned the hard way, when her precision shooting saved them from situations their arrogance had gotten them into. "I have documentation," she said, pulling a folder from her bag. "Letters of recommendation from my previous employers. Marksmanship scores. Combat experience verification." Mills barely glanced at the papers she placed on his desk. "Look, Miss Chen. Sarah Chen. Miss Chen, I'm sure you're very dedicated, but the military has standards. Physical standards. Mental standards. There's a reason we don't put women in combat roles. It's not personal, it's practical." "The physical standards are publicly available," Sarah replied. "I exceed them in every category. Running, strength training, endurance. I can outshoot most of the men in this room." This brought another round of laughter, louder this time. One of the recruits, a tall blonde kid who looked like he'd stepped off a college football field, stood up from his chair. "You can outshoot us?" He grinned at his friends. "That's rich. Lady, I've been hunting since I was 8 years old. I can drop a deer at 300 yards. Sarah turned to look at him, her expression neutral. 300 yards with what rifle? What conditions? Wind speed? Temperature? Humidity? Was the target moving? The kid's grin faltered slightly. What does that matter? A shot's a shot. No, Sarah said quietly. A shot is the end result of 100 calculations, perfect timing, and absolute stillness of mind. It's the difference between bringing your team home alive and watching them die because you thought you were good enough. The room fell quiet again, but this time it was different. The laughter had died, replaced by something that might have been respect, if these men had been capable of recognizing it. Mills cleared his throat. Miss Chen, I appreciate your passion. But the fact remains that women aren't built for this kind of work. It's not discrimination, it's biology. Men have advantages in strength, speed, aggression. Sarah interrupted. Sergeant, have you ever had to take a human life? The question hung in the air like smoke. Mills shifted uncomfortably in his chair. That's not relevant to this conversation. I have, Sarah said simply. 3 times. All necessary. All clean. No hesitation, no trauma, no sleepless nights. Just mathematics and execution. If you want to talk about what this job requires, let's talk about the ability to remain calm under pressure. The ability to make life and death decisions in split seconds. The ability to carry out those decisions without letting emotion interfere. She paused, letting her words sink in. Those aren't male traits, Sergeant. Those are professional traits. Mills looked down at her paperwork again, this time actually reading it. His expression grew more serious as he scanned the documents. Letters from company commanders praising her accuracy and reliability. Commendations from Afghan government officials whose lives she had saved. Test scores that would have been impressive for anyone, male or female. These are quite impressive, he admitted grudgingly. They should be. I earned them. But, Miss Chen, even if your skills are as advertised, there are other considerations. Unit cohesion. The distraction factor. Men in combat situations, well, they might not think clearly with a woman around. Sarah's laugh was dry and humorless. Sergeant, if a soldier is thinking about anything other than the mission when bullets are flying, he's already dead. And, frankly, if he can't maintain focus around a woman, he doesn't belong in combat either. The blonde recruit spoke up again, his voice carrying less confidence than before. Look, no offense, but this isn't about being mean to women or whatever. It's about life and death. When the shit hits the fan, when everything goes wrong, you need to know the person next to you can handle it. No disrespect, but most women just can't. Sarah turned her full attention to him. What's your name, recruit? Jake. Jake Morrison. Jake Morrison. Tell me about the worst day of your life. Jake blinked, caught off guard. What? Your worst day. The day that tested you more than any other. The day you thought you might not make it through. Jake glanced around the room, looking for support. Why does that matter? Because I want to know what you think qualifies as a real test. Because I want to understand what you think breaks people. Jake straightened up, his earlier bravado returning. Car accident when I was 17. Flipped my truck on black ice. Broke 3 ribs, punctured a lung. Had to crawl out of the wreckage and walk 2 miles for help in a snowstorm. Took 4 hours. That's impressive, Sarah said, and she meant it. That shows real toughness. Real determination. Jake smiled, pleased with the acknowledgement. Now let me tell you about my Tuesday, Sarah continued. Convoy escort outside Kandahar. IED took out the lead vehicle. Driver was conscious but trapped, fuel tank ruptured, fire spreading. 2 hostiles on the ridge, 400 meters out, pinning down the rescue team with automatic weapons fire. The room had gone completely silent. Even Mills had stopped pretending to work on his paperwork. I had maybe 30 seconds before that driver burned alive. 30 seconds to identify the hostile positions, calculate distance, wind drift, and bullet drop. 30 seconds to take 2 precision shots while my friends were screaming for help 50 meters away. She paused, her voice remaining steady and matter of fact. First shot, hostile down. Second shot, hostile down. Rescue team moved in, extracted the driver. He lived. Lost his left leg below the knee, but he lived. He went home to his wife and 2 kids. Sarah looked directly at Jake. That was a Tuesday for me. Just another day at work. So when you tell me that women can't handle pressure, when you tell me we break under stress, I wonder what exactly you think combat is going to be like. Jake had nothing to say to that. Neither did anyone else. Mills cleared his throat again. Miss Chen, while your experience is notable, the fact remains that official policy has been changing, Sarah interrupted. Combat roles for women are being evaluated on a case-by-case basis. Individual merit rather than blanket prohibitions. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for the same opportunity to prove myself that you'd give to any male recruit with my qualifications. But, the physical demands are requirements, not suggestions. If I can't meet them, wash me out. If I can't keep up with the men, send me home. But, let me try. Mills looked around the room, as if seeking support from the other recruits. But, the earlier mockery had evaporated. These young men might still doubt her, but they were no longer laughing. Miss Chen, Mills said finally, I'm going to be straight with you. Even if I wanted to approve this request, it's above my pay grade. A woman requesting sniper training? That would have to go up the chain. Way up the chain. How far up? Division level at minimum. Maybe higher. Sarah nodded. Then, send it up. You don't understand. The paperwork alone would take weeks. And, even then, the chances of approval are practically zero. You'd be better off choosing a different path. I'll wait for the paperwork. And, I'll take those odds. Mills stared at her for a long moment, then, shook his head. Your choice. But, don't say I didn't warn you. The military isn't ready for this. Maybe it never will be. Sarah gathered her documents and prepared to leave. As she turned toward the door, Jake Morrison spoke up one more time. Chun. She stopped and looked back at him. That story you told. About the convoy. That really happened? Yes. And you really made those shots? Under pressure like that? Yes. Jake nodded slowly. That's pretty badass. It wasn't much, but it was something. Sarah allowed herself the smallest smile. Thank you. As she walked out of the recruitment office, Sarah could feel their eyes on her. Some still skeptical, some grudgingly impressed. But the laughter had stopped. The mockery had been replaced by something else. Maybe not respect, not yet. But acknowledgement. She had planted a seed. Now she just had to wait to see if it would grow. 3 weeks later, Mills called her back to the office. His expression was unreadable as he handed her a letter marked with official seals and signatures. Miss Chen, he said, it appears your request has been reviewed. Sarah opened the letter, scanning quickly through the military jargon and bureaucratic language until she found what she was looking for. Request denied. But, at the bottom, in handwriting that looked like it belonged to someone much higher up the chain of command than Mills, was a single sentence, resubmit with enhanced documentation. Special consideration authorized. Sarah looked up at Mills. What does this mean? Mills shrugged, but there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Means someone upstairs is curious about you, Miss Chun. Someone wants to know more about what you can do. Who? Above my pay grade, like I said. But, whoever it is, they've got enough rank to override standard procedures. That's not something that happens every day. Sarah folded the letter carefully and put it in her bag.
What kind of enhanced documentation? Field demonstration. Live fire exercises.
Performance under simulated combat conditions.
Basically, they want to see if you can back up all that talk.
For the first time since walking into the recruitment office, Sarah felt something that might have been nervousness. Not fear, but the recognition that this was it. This was her shot.
She wouldn't get another one. When?
2 weeks.
Fort Bragg.
You'll be evaluated by a panel of military instructors and...
Mills consulted his paperwork. At least one general. A general? Like I said, Miss Chen. Someone upstairs is very curious about you.
As Sarah left the office for the second time, she noticed that Jake Morrison was there again, apparently having some issues with his own paperwork. He looked up as she passed.
Chun. Morrison.
Good luck. She paused at the door and looked back at him.
Thank you. But luck isn't going to be enough. Jake grinned. No, I guess it won't be. But, if anyone can do it, it's probably you.
It was a small thing, but it meant something.
The mockery was gone. Now came the real test.
Sarah walked out into the afternoon sunlight, her mind already turning to the preparation ahead. 2 weeks to prove that she belonged.
2 weeks to show them that their assumptions about women in combat were wrong. 2 weeks to change everything.
She had faced worse odds before.
And she had won.
Time to win again. Fort Bragg sprawled across the North Carolina landscape like a small city dedicated to the art of warfare. Sarah Chin arrived on base at 0600 hours, 2 full hours before her scheduled evaluation. She had learned long ago that preparation was everything, and being early was just the beginning of preparation. The morning air was crisp, carrying the familiar sense of military life, diesel fuel, gun oil, and the peculiar smell of men under pressure. Sarah breathed it in like a familiar perfume. This was her world, even if the world didn't always accept her place in it. She found the designated building easily enough, a nondescript concrete structure that could have housed anything from administrative offices to weapons storage. The only indication of its purpose was the armed guard at the entrance and the small sign reading Evaluation Center, authorized personnel only. Captain Rodriguez met her at the security checkpoint. He was younger than Sarah had expected, probably in his early 30s, with the kind of quiet intensity that came from seeing real combat. His handshake was firm without being a test of strength.
Miss Chen, I'm Captain Rodriguez.
I'll be coordinating your evaluation today.
Thank you, Captain. I'm ready to begin whenever you are.
Rodriguez studied her for a moment, taking in her military-style clothing, her alert posture, the way her eyes automatically scanned the building's layout and exits.
You've done this before.
Not exactly this, but similar evaluations.
Private sector. Right. I read your file. Impressive work in Afghanistan. I was just doing my job.
Your job included some remarkable shots, according to these reports.
Sarah didn't respond immediately.
She had learned that in situations like this, less was often more. Let her actions speak instead of her words. Rodriguez led her through a series of corridors that looked like every military building she had ever been in.
Fluorescent lights, green walls, the sound of boots on linoleum floors. But there were differences too. More security than usual. More cameras. And an undercurrent of tension that suggested today's evaluation was not routine. Miss Chen, before we begin, I need to explain what's going to happen today.
This evaluation was requested at the highest levels. That means there are people watching who normally wouldn't be involved in recruitment decisions.
How high? General Morrison is here personally, along with representatives from Special Operations Command and... Rodriguez paused. Other interested parties.
Sarah felt a flicker of surprise.
General Morrison.
She had heard that name before, though she couldn't place where.
May I ask why there's so much interest in one recruit?
Rodriguez stopped walking and turned to face her.
Miss Chen, How much do you know about current military policy regarding women in combat roles? I know it's changing. Slowly. It's more than changing. It's being revolutionized. But revolutions don't happen without proof of concept. Without someone willing to be the test case. The implication was clear. Sarah wasn't just being evaluated for military service. She was being evaluated as a symbol, a precedent, a potential game changer for every woman who might want to serve in combat roles after her. That's a lot of pressure, she said. Yes, it is. Can you handle it? Sarah thought about the convoy in Afghanistan. The burning vehicle. The 30-second window to save a life. Captain, pressure is just another variable to account for. Like wind speed or target distance. Rodriguez smiled for the first time that morning. Good answer. Let's go meet the evaluation team. The briefing room was larger than Sarah had expected, with a long table facing a wall of observation windows. Behind the windows, she could see shadowy figures that must have been the observers Rodriguez had mentioned. The evaluation team itself consisted of 4 military personnel: Rodriguez, a grizzled master sergeant who looked like he could bench press a small car, a female lieutenant colonel who watched Sarah with sharp intelligent eyes, and a civilian contractor whose presence suggested this evaluation had implications beyond standard military service. Miss Chen, Rodriguez began, this evaluation will consist of 4 phases. Physical fitness, marksmanship, tactical knowledge, and psychological assessment. You need to pass all 4 phases to be considered for advanced training. What are the passing criteria? For physical fitness, you need to meet or exceed male standards for your age group. For marksmanship, you need to demonstrate proficiency with multiple weapon systems at various ranges and under different conditions. For tactical knowledge, you'll be tested on everything from basic field craft to advanced combat scenarios. And for psychological assessment. Rodriguez glanced toward the observation windows. You'll need to demonstrate that you can function effectively under the kind of pressure that combat roles involve. The master sergeant, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. Miss Chen, I'm Master Sergeant Walsh. I've been training soldiers for 22 years. I've seen a lot of people think they're ready for this life, and I've seen most of them quit when they realize what it actually requires. What does it actually require, Master Sergeant? Walsh's expression was unreadable. The ability to kill another human being without hesitation when necessary. The ability to watch your friends die and keep fighting. The ability to make decisions that will haunt you for the rest of your life and live with the consequences. He paused. Do you think you have those abilities, Miss Chen? Sarah met his gaze steadily. I know I do, Master Sergeant. The question is whether I'll have the opportunity to prove it. The Lieutenant Colonel spoke for the first time. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Hayes. I've read your service records from Afghanistan. Impressive work with Alpha Security Solutions. Thank you, ma'am. But private military contractors operate under different rules than military personnel. Different accountability, different chain of command, different mission parameters. Are you prepared for that adjustment? It was a fair question. Sarah had considered it many times during her preparation for this evaluation. Lieutenant Colonel, in Afghanistan I learned that the mission comes first, always. Whether I'm working for a private company or the United States military, that principle doesn't change. The rules of engagement might be different, the command structure might be different, but the core responsibility remains the same: complete the mission and bring everyone home alive. Hayes nodded approvingly. We'll see if your performance matches your philosophy. The civilian contractor introduced himself as Dr. Martinez, a psychologist specializing in combat stress and military psychology. He would be conducting the psychological evaluation later in the day. Phase 1 begins now, Rodriguez announced. Physical fitness test. Standard Army requirements with additional endurance and strength components. The next 2 hours were brutal but familiar. Sarah had been maintaining military-level fitness since leaving Afghanistan, knowing that eventually she would need to prove herself again.
push-ups, sit-ups, 2-mile run, obstacles course, weapons carry, and endurance challenges that pushed her to her limits. She passed every test, often exceeding the male standards Rodriguez had mentioned. When it was over, she was exhausted but not defeated. Walsh actually looked impressed, though he tried to hide it. Phase 1 complete, Rodriguez announced. 15-minute break, then, we moved to the range. During the break, Sarah noticed that more observers had arrived behind the windows. She couldn't make out faces, but she could sense their attention like a weight pressing down on her shoulders. The marksmanship phase took place at a sprawling outdoor range with targets at distances ranging from 50 yards to over 800 yards. Sarah was tested with pistols, rifles, and specialized sniper systems. The conditions were deliberately challenging: crosswinds, varying light conditions, moving targets, and time pressure scenarios. This was where Sarah truly shined. Every shot was precise, controlled, calculated. She adjusted for wind and distance instinctively, her movements economical and professional. When they moved to the 800-yard targets with a high-powered rifle system, she consistently placed shots within a few inches of center mass. Master Sergeant Walsh served as the range safety officer, and Sarah could hear him calling out her scores with growing amazement. Dead center. Dead center again. Jesus Christ, she's putting them through the same hole. But the real test came when Rodriguez introduced the stress scenarios. Targets that popped up unexpectedly. Simulated enemy fire using paintball rounds. Physical exhaustion before shooting. Multiple targets requiring rapid engagement and disengagement. Sarah handled it all with the same calm professionalism she had shown in Afghanistan. Her heart rate stayed steady, her breathing remained controlled, and her shots stayed accurate even when paintball rounds were splashing around her position. The final marksmanship challenge was the most demanding: a moving target at 600 yards, crosswind conditions, with simulated enemy fire incoming. Sarah had 30 seconds to identify the target, range the distance, account for wind and movement, and take the shot. She took 15 seconds to prepare and fired on the 16th second. Dead center. The range fell silent except for the wind rustling through the trees. Walsh lowered his binoculars and shook his head in disbelief. In 22 years of training soldiers, I have never seen shooting like that. Rodriguez's voice carried a note of amazement. Phase 2 complete. All criteria exceeded. During the lunch break, Sarah noticed that the observers behind the windows had multiplied again. Whatever was happening here had attracted significant attention from the military hierarchy. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes conducted the tactical knowledge phase, presenting Sarah with increasingly complex scenarios and requiring her to develop solutions under time pressure. Urban warfare situations, hostage rescue planning, convoy security, intelligence gathering, and counter-terrorism operations. Sarah's experience in Afghanistan served her well here. She had dealt with most of these situations in real life, not just in training exercises. Her answers were practical, detailed, and demonstrated a deep understanding of modern warfare tactics. Miss Chen, Hayes said after the formal testing was complete, I want to present you with a hypothetical situation. You're part of a special operations team tasked with eliminating a high-value target in an urban environment. Intelligence suggests the target is being protected by a minimum of 6 armed guards, possibly more. Civilian population in the area is high, and collateral damage must be minimized. How do you approach this mission? Sarah thought for a moment, visualizing the scenario in her mind. First priority is intelligence gathering. I need to know the exact layout of the target building, guard positions and rotation schedules, civilian movement patterns, and escape routes. That intelligence gathering phase could take days or weeks. Assume you have all the intelligence you need. Then, I recommend a night operation with a 2-person sniper team providing overwatch while the main assault team moves in. The snipers eliminate outer perimeter guards silently, creating a window for the assault team to reach the building undetected. Primary sniper takes the target when opportunity presents, backup sniper covers the withdrawal. Hayes leaned forward. And if you were the primary sniper? 600 yards, urban environment, limited firing window, high-value target who cannot be allowed to escape.
Then, I take the shot. Even knowing that missing or hesitating could result in the deaths of your team members? Especially knowing that. Hayes made notes on her evaluation form. Phase 3 complete.
The psychological evaluation with Dr. Martinez was the most unsettling part of the entire process. Unlike the physical and tactical tests, which had clear success criteria, this phase felt subjective and unpredictable. Martinez asked her about her childhood, her motivations for military service, her experiences in Afghanistan, and her coping mechanisms for dealing with violence and death. He presented her with ethical dilemmas and psychological stress scenarios, probing for weaknesses or instabilities that might surface under the extreme pressures of combat.
Miss Chen, you've killed 3 people in combat situations. How has that affected you psychologically?
Sarah had expected this question, but it was still difficult to answer honestly.
Each situation was different.
The first time was the hardest, not because I felt guilty, but because I realized how easy it was.
How natural it felt. That was more disturbing than the actual killing. Explain what you mean by natural.
I mean that when the moment came, there was no hesitation, no moral struggle, no emotional conflict. I identified a threat to friendly forces, I had the capability to neutralize the threat, and I did so.
It felt like any other technical skill. Like driving a car or operating a computer. Martinez made notes. And that concerned you?
It made me realize that I have the psychological makeup for this kind of work. Whether that's a strength or a character flaw, I'm not sure.
What about the other 2 kills? Easier each time.
More confident in my decision-making, more efficient in execution.
I know that probably sounds cold. It sounds honest.
The session continued for over an hour, covering everything from her relationships with family and friends to her plans for the future. Martinez was skilled at finding psychological pressure points and testing how she responded to stress, criticism, and uncertainty. When it was over, Sarah felt emotionally drained in a way that the physical and tactical tests hadn't affected her.
Thank you, Miss Chen, Martinez said. That concludes the formal evaluation process. How did I do? That's not for me to say.
The evaluation team will make their recommendation to General Morrison. Rodriguez escorted her back to the briefing room, where the evaluation team was huddled in quiet conversation. Through the observation windows, she could see that the number of observers had grown to at least a dozen. Miss Chen, Rodriguez said, the evaluation team needs about 30 minutes to compile their reports and recommendations. You're welcome to wait here, or I'll wait. It was the longest 30 minutes of Sarah's life. She sat in the briefing room, running through the day's events in her mind, trying to identify any mistakes or weaknesses that might have hurt her chances. The physical tests had gone well, the marksmanship had been exceptional, the tactical knowledge phase had felt solid, and the psychological evaluation, well, that was harder to judge. Finally, Rodriguez returned with the rest of the evaluation team. Their expressions were unreadable. Miss Chen, Rodriguez began, the evaluation team has reached a unanimous decision regarding your application for specialized training.
Sarah braced herself for disappointment.
She had been here before, in different forms. The moment when qualification and preparation met institutional resistance and lost.
All 4 phases were completed successfully. Physical fitness exceeded standards. Marksmanship, exceptional performance. Tactical knowledge, thorough and practical understanding demonstrated.
Psychological evaluation, suitable for high-stress combat operations. Sarah felt her heart rate increase despite her efforts to remain calm.
However, Rodriguez continued, and there it was.
The inevitable, however, that would end her hopes once again. The final decision regarding your acceptance into advanced sniper training cannot be made at this level.
General Morrison has requested a personal interview. A personal interview? Right now.
Rodriguez led her through another series of corridors to a door marked Conference Room A. He knocked once and waited for permission to enter.
General Morrison? Miss Chen is here for her interview. Send her in.
Sarah stepped into a room that was smaller and more intimate than she had expected. A single conference table, a few chairs, and, behind the table, a man whose presence immediately commanded attention. General Morrison was older than Sarah had expected, probably in his early 60s, with silver hair and the kind of calm authority that came from decades of leadership in dangerous situations. His uniform bore decorations that told the story of a long and distinguished career. But it was his eyes that captured Sarah's attention. Sharp, intelligent, and completely focused on her in a way that made her feel like he could see straight through to her core motivations and capabilities.
"Miss Chen, please sit down."
She took the chair across from him, maintaining military posture despite not being in uniform herself.
"I've been reviewing your evaluation results. Impressive performance across all categories." "Thank you, sir. I've also been reading the reports from your work in Afghanistan. Very impressive indeed." Morrison leaned forward slightly. "Tell me why you want to be a sniper."
The question was direct and demanded an equally direct answer.
"Because I'm good at it, sir."
"And because the military needs people who are good at it."
"That's pragmatic."
"But pragmatism alone doesn't sustain someone through the psychological demands of this role."
"What else?" Sarah thought carefully before answering. This was clearly the crucial moment, the make or break point of her entire application.
"General, I've spent 2 years watching American soldiers and contractors die because they didn't have adequate precision fire support.
I've seen missions fail because the people making decisions about sniper deployment don't understand what precision marksmanship can accomplish." She paused.
"I want to be part of the solution to that problem."
Morrison nodded slowly. "You understand that acceptance into this program would make you a test case.
The first woman to complete specialized sniper training in the U.S. military. That comes with pressures and responsibilities beyond the normal requirements of the role."
"I understand that, sir." "Do you? Do you understand that every mistake you make will be attributed to your gender? That every success will be dismissed as an exception? That you'll be fighting not just enemy combatants, but institutional prejudice every day of your career?" Sarah met his gaze steadily.
"General, I've been fighting institutional prejudice my entire adult life. The difference is that now I might have the chance to fight it from the inside, with official support." Morrison was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those sharp eyes.
"Miss Chen, there are people in this building who think this interview is a waste of time.
They believe that women don't belong in combat roles, regardless of individual qualifications. There are others who think you're being set up to fail, as proof that the current policies are correct."
"What do you think, General?" "I think that the enemy doesn't care about American gender politics.
I think that wars are won by putting the best people in the right positions, regardless of what those people look like or where they come from." Morrison leaned back in his chair. "I also think that you have the potential to be an exceptional sniper, if you're willing to pay the price."
"I'm willing, sir. We'll see."
Morrison opened a folder on the table and pulled out a document that looked official and important. He slid it across the table to Sarah. "Miss Chen, pending final background checks and security clearances, you are hereby accepted into the U.S. Army Special Operations Sniper Training Program. Training begins in 6 weeks at Fort Bragg." Sarah stared at the document, hardly believing what she was seeing.
After all the rejection, all the mockery, all the closed doors. "There's one more thing," Morrison said. "This acceptance comes with a code designation that will follow you throughout your military career.
It's unusual, but, given the unique nature of your situation, Special Operations Command has approved a special classification." He pulled out another document, this one with various security markings and official seals.
"Your operational designation will be Black Talon Mark.
That designation carries certain privileges and responsibilities that will be explained during your training."
Sarah looked up from the paperwork. "Black Talon Mark? What does that mean?"
General Morrison smiled for the first time since she had entered the room. "It means, Miss Chen, that you just became the deadliest woman in the United States military."
"Congratulations."
As Sarah walked out of Fort Bragg that afternoon, carrying the paperwork that would change her life, she thought about the recruitment office where this had all started. The laughter, the mockery, the assumption that she wasn't capable of handling men's work. In 6 weeks, she would begin training that would prove them all wrong. But, more than that, she would begin the process of opening doors for every woman who might want to follow in her footsteps. The nickname Black Talon mark felt like destiny.
Time to earn it.